I now come to the third and final part of my presentation. Creating a book can be as much a surprise for the writer as it later is for readers. It's as much a learning experience for the writer or editor as it is a dissemination of knowledge to others. Through working on this book, I learned that the 1897 text belongs to a genre of writing called future war fiction, brought into critical discussion, at least in English language literary circles during the past several decades, through the dedication of Emeritus Professor I.F. Clarke of Strathclyde. Here is a photograph taken in the summer of 2000 of Professor Clarke with myself. Following this meeting, the late Professor Clarke very kindly provided a valuable introduction for Hong Kong Invaded, and my final work on this book was considerably improved by the knowledge I gained by reading Professor Clarke's work and communications with him. What I learnt was that works of future war fiction became extremely popular following the publication in 1871 by George Tompkins Chesney, a former officer of engineers, later Member of Parliament for Oxford, of a very influential tale describing the fictional invasion of Britain. Its title, The Battle of Dorking. There are hundreds of such texts from this period describing the threat of a future war. The war that eventually came, of course, was the First World War. Following the horrors of that experience, the world itself changed, and so did writing about war. As we all know, future war fiction is still written and increasingly presented in films, not only in English, but in several major world languages. Sometimes, in some parts of the world, its aim is still to talk about a specific country or territory and to address a particular political or military situation. The nature and outcome of future war fictions are both ambiguous. On the one hand, future war fiction warns about specific military or technological threats. On the other hand, there's clear evidence that some of these writings have provided information which has in fact been used for the very purpose which the writing aimed to defeat. Examples are mentioned in Hong Kong Invaded. Certainly, The Back Door may be such an example. I regret I've not yet read The Island of Crimea by Vasily Aksionov, 1983. The original book cover shows an image of Hong Kong. I look forward to learning whether this is another example. I've already mentioned that those who now read The Back Door are surprised that those imagined as invading Hong Kong in 1897 are France and Russia, rather than the Japanese, who really did invade Hong Kong 44 years after The Back Door was published. There's every reason to suppose that the Japanese would have read anything and everything relevant to the defense of Hong Kong when preparing the invasion in 1941. During the battle for Hong Kong, the Japanese staged a demonstration landing on the south side of Hong Kong Island. Spoken of in Captive Christmas, the interesting book by the late Alan Birch and Martin Cole, as effected in order to deceive the enemy, that is, the Hong Kong defense, into thinking that the landing would be carried out there. it seems quite possible that this Japanese action was partly inspired by the back door. And the same could be true of the other invasion routes through the new territories, Kowloon, and across the harbour. Hong Kong Invaded includes sketch maps that develop the comparison between the fiction 1897 invasion and the real 1941 invasion. If the Japanese really did know and study the back door, then, as I wrote in Hong Kong Invaded, not only did this 1897 fiction teach the way to defend Britain's colony, it also taught an enemy one way to attack it. While short-term, the pen is powerless before the sword, it can instruct the sword where to fall, as well as where to pause. The Japanese are known to be great collectors. I'm still hopeful, following the publication of Hong Kong Invaded, that a Japanese collector will come forward with the first edition of the 1897 text, The Back Door, annotated in Japanese.